Al-Imam Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali rahimahullah relates that the madhab of the Selef and al-Imam Ahmed is Tafweedh in the meaning of the divine attributes. Tafweedh meaning to consign their meaning to Allah Azza wa Jal. Ibn Rajab rahimahullah shows that establishing types of literal meanings of the divine attributes is the doctrine of Muqatil bin Sulaiman and the Karramiyah. In case you're not familiar with the Muqatiliyah and the Karramiyah, we can look at what al-Mutahhir bin Tahir al-Maqdisi says in his book, Kitab al-Bada' wa-Tarikh, where he says, أما المقاتلية هم أصحاب مقاتل بن سليمان زعم أن الله جسم من الأجسام لحم ودم وأنه سب أشبار, meaning that the Muqatiliyah, they are the companions of Muqatil bin Sulaiman, and they claim that Allah is a body of bodies with flesh and blood, and that he is of 7 ashbar in size. وأما الكرامية فإنهم أصحاب محمد بن كرام وهم سكان الخانقة يزعمون أن الله تعالى جسم لا كالأجسام مماس على العرش. Regarding the Karramiyah, they are the companions of Muhammad bin Karam, and they are the people who live in al-Khandaqa. Al-Khandaqa is a place in Al-Quds. They claim that Allah Ta'ala is a body, but not like bodies, and that He's touching the Arsh. Now that we quickly clarified those two deviant groups, we can go back to what Al-Imam Ibn Rajab rahimahullah has mentioned in his book, Fadl Ilm al-Salaf al-Khalf, the superiority of the knowledge of the Selef over the later followers, where he says, and what is correct is the madhab of the Selef, to establish them and not to delve into their meanings, them meaning the divine attributes. Ibn Rajab rahimahullah said, what is meant is that his nuzul, the exalted, is not like the descending of creatures.
Rather, it's a nuzul benefiting his qudra,
his greatness and his knowledge that encompasses everything. Created beings don't encompass him with knowledge, but rather they end up to what he informed them about himself or what his messenger informed about him. This is why the pious Selef agreed to pass on these texts as they came, without addition or omission. And what is confusing to understand from them, and the mind falls short of comprehending it, is entrusted to the one who knows it. And the second group is the one who aspires to affirm them, meaning the divine attributes, with the evidence of the intellect that the athar or traditions didn't refer to, and is related on their discourse, like what is the way of Muqatil bin Sulaiman and those who followed him, such as Nuh bin Abi Maryam, and a group of the hadith scholars, past and present, who followed them. It is also the path of the Karramiyah, for among them are those who affirm these as bodily attributes, either as word or in meaning. And among them are those who affirm attributes for Allah that the book and the sunnah did not bring, such as movement, al-haraka, and other things that, according to him, are essential to the established attributes. The predecessors refuted Muqatil, his saying in his response to Jahm, with rational evidence, and they went to great lengths in the rebuttal against him. And among them were those who deemed it lawful to kill him. Among them, Makki ibn Ibrahim, the Sheikh of al-Bukhari, and others. And what is correct is what the pious Selef were upon, of passing on the verse of the divine attributes and their hadiths as they came, without interpretation of them, expressing how or similarity. None of them are correct to be indifferent to that at all, especially to be indifferent to Imam Ahmed, and there is no delving into their meanings, nor making a similitude of similitudes for them, even if some of those who were close to the time of Imam Ahmed, among them, those who did something of following the way of Muqatil, then one shouldn't follow him in that. Rather, he should follow the Imams of al-Islam, such as Ibn al-Mubarak, Malik, Thawri, al-Awza'i, al-Shafi'i, Ahmed, Ishaq, Abu Ubaid, and the likes of them. That's the end of what Al-Imam Ibn Rajab rahimahullah has mentioned, and I think there are a few points we can summarize here because there was a lot of benefit, mashallah, in this very short part of the text. First, we can say that the text makes it clear that Al-Imam Ibn Rajab was mufawwid, despite the illusions of some people, which this surprises me when I hear people say that he was not mufawwid, because if you read this text, it's very clear. It makes you wonder if these people have read Ibn Rajab, and if so, if they've failed or refused to understand him. Just to repeat what Ibn Rajab rahimahullah said when he talks about the pious Selef Salih and how they approached those verses with the mutashabihat or unclear verses, unclear words in them. He said that the Selef, regarding those texts, what is confusing to understand from them, and the mind falls short of comprehending, is entrusted to the one who knows it. Yani, is entrusted to the one who knows it. This is the definition of a Tafweedh. So there should be no doubt that Al-Imam Ibn Rajab rahimahullah was mufawwid and established that as the way of the Selef. Next, we can also make note that despite the dispute or difference in interpretation between the Muqatiliyah and the Karamiyah, they both followed the initial same mistake which led them to misguidance. So if you want to understand about the Muqatiliyah and the Karamiyah, you can maybe go back to the beginning of the video where we explained that, but the point is that they have affirmed some type of a literal meaning, if we can call it like that. Next, we also want to pay attention to how Imam Ibn Rajab rahimahullah has described and censured the Karamiyah. If we go back to what he said, he says, "It is also the path of the Karamiyah, for among them are those who affirm these as bodily attributes, either as word or in meaning." Focus on what he said, either as word. Does this sound like people we know today? People who say things like, it's a hand, but unlike hands. Yani, what he's saying here about the Karamiyah, affirming those attributes, either as word or in meaning. This is different than a Tafweedh and the idea of a mushtarak al-lafz, which we've discussed before, but in case you don't know, this means that there are two words with different meanings, but they share the same word. The famous example that we are always using is like the eye. The eye can be a body part, it can be the eye of a storm, etc. So this is mushtarak al-lafz, and this is the way of the Hanabila, and this is not the way of the Karamiyah, because as he said, they're establishing the word or the meaning. And on this point, this is also why you should understand why we're always warning against translating the divine attributes into English. Because when you say yad of Allah, as hand of Allah, Yani that's incorrect. Allah called it yad. You have given it the meaning of hand. And even if you want to say, well, it's a hand, but it's not like other hands or whatever, this is what the Karamiya say. And we know there are people today, they are saying the same thing. Na'udhu billah. Finally, we can reflect on how Ibn Rajab has described the way of the Selef and al-Imam Ahmed radiyallahu anhum. More specifically, what he says about delving into meanings, which includes both literal and metaphorical meanings. So we'll just quickly read what he said at the end. And what is correct is what the pious Selef were upon, of passing on the verses of the divine attributes and their hadiths as they came, without interpretation of them, expressing how or similarity. None of them are correct to be indifference to that at all, especially to be indifference to al-Imam Ahmed, and there is no delving into their meanings. So this is again a very clear statement of a Tafweedh. Imam Ibn Rajab, he said that knowledge of those unclear verses is entrusted to the one who knows it, and again says that the way of al-Imam Ahmed and the Selef is not to delve into the meanings. So let's reflect on these many lessons that we've derived from this text. Let's be careful of how we are talking about the sifat, the divine attributes. Let's avoid translating them into English. Let's avoid giving them literal or metaphorical meanings. And let's avoid, as the Karamiya were doing, affirming some of these as bodily attributes in word,
such as hand,
such as eye. Allah musta'an. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.